Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Marcia Proto, and I'm the Executive Director for the Connecticut Center for Nursing Workforce, and love to welcome you to our workshop today, Synergy in Academic Practice Partnerships. And today is December 5th, 2023, and we're delighted to have Dr. Brittany Burke with us, who will be facilitating our lunch and learn session today. Before we do jump into her presentation, as you know, the Connecticut Center for Nursing Workforce does offer contact hours for our programming. And so I would just like to put up our sheet. One moment. We'll open it up again, outlining our contact hour process. So one moment, let me just share my screen. We love technology, don't we? Here we go. Perfect. So again, welcome to our workshop. And today we were going to be awarding one contact hour for today's session. And participants must be present for the entire program and complete the evaluation. The evaluation will be sent to you after today's webinar by my colleague, Peg Malik. And the Connecticut Center for Nursing Workforce is an approved provider of nursing continuing professional development by the Connecticut Nurses Association, an accredited approver by the American Nurse Credentialing Center Commission on Accreditation. The speaker has no conflict of interest for the content of today's program, nor any financial relationship with any commercial interest pertinent to the content of this education activity. The authors, reviewers, and nurse planners for this education program report no conflict of interest or relevant financial relationships. So I just wanted to get that out of the way before we jump in. So if individuals would be kind enough, I know we do have a nice dialogue of a group. I noticed most of you have already put your first and last name on your video, so that is wonderful. I'd also like to thank our 2023 Annual Nursing Workforce supporters for the Connecticut Center for Nursing Workforce, and that's Charter Oak State College. And thank you, Nancy, for being on the line. Quinnipiac University, and I see Lisa Rabeshi, Sacred Heart University Davis and Henley College of Nursing, Southern Connecticut State University School of Nursing, Southern New Hampshire University, and Versant Healthcare Competency Solutions. As we're going to have Brittany kick off in just a moment, if you'd be kind enough to mute your microphones. And to get a better view, you may want to change your view to speaker view, so the slides will be nice and prominent on your screen. We're going to have some question and answers at the end, or feel free to use the chat. I'll be monitoring the chat to assist Brittany today. And as I mentioned, the evaluation will be coming at the end of the workshop or tomorrow morning. And when you complete that, Peg Malik will send you your certificate of completion. So Dr. Brittany Burke, she's the System Director of Norton Healthcare Institute for Education and Development in Louisville, Kentucky. She provides direct leadership to over 500 employees through student and professional employment. Brittany leads the strategic alignment of academic practice partnerships, collaborations, and affiliations across Norton's Healthcare multi-site hospital, Norton Medical Group, and Norton Cancer Institute. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Brittany Burke, our keynote speaker for today. Brittany.
Thank you, Marcia, and thank you all so much for having me back. I see some faces that I know, and I feel like I am in good company, and I know I am. So thank you so much. Give me 1 second, and I will share my screen, and we will get started. Okay, let me know if you all can see it. Is it full screen? Fantastic. Okay. Well, yes, I have the pleasure of talking about synergy and academic practice partnerships. And so just to kind of give you a little bit of an overview as far as what we are going to cover, let me go to, oh, come on. There we go. So we're going to talk about the objectives for this time that we have together. So we're going to talk about the Institute for Education and Development, of which I'm so proud to lead, because that will give you some context as far as what we do and why we do it. We'll also talk about the Schools of Nursing volume in Norton Healthcare. We'll discuss first year RN turnover, and then we'll talk about the true alignment of academic practice partnerships and how that's working so beautifully for us at Norton Healthcare. So I'd love to start off here because I think this is a beautiful quote from James Cash Penney. And you all probably know James Cash Penney as J.C. Penney, the store. And so I just love how it kind of sets the tone. Growth is never by mere chance. It is the result of forces working together. And so that's super important for us to understand, is because a lot of times we talk about growth, but we don't actually put a strategy behind it. We wish, we want, we hope, we pray, but there's not really anything tangible that we can grab onto. And so this is really true. It's forces working together. And then when we talk about synergy, so when we define synergy, it's the interaction or cooperation of two or more organizations, substances, or other agents to produce a combined effect greater than the sum of their separate parts. And so that's really the foundation of what we're going to talk about, is how synergy started at Norton Healthcare through what we call our SNAP program, and how we are heavily into academic practice partnerships today. So here's the Institute at Norton Healthcare. We have 7 centers. We started out as the Institute for Nursing. That's when I came on. And that was 8 years ago. And here we are 8 years later, and we are the Institute for Education and Development with 7 centers. The one specifically we're going to focus on today is the Center for Nursing Practice. So I'm going to give you a little timeline. We're going to go step by step so you see how all this went together. So in 2017, I had the ability to start what we call our SNAP program, which is our Student Nurse Apprenticeship Program. This was a passion project of mine. I was in my DNP program. I really wanted to learn and study more about students. I wanted to understand why students stay, why students leave, and how we could really encourage them as far as getting them ready for practice. I believe there's a difference in readiness for practice and transition to practice. A lot of the evidence out there puts them in one bucket. But in my opinion, you can't transition someone who's not ready. And so our job is to make sure they're ready. And so our student nurse program gave us the opportunity to really invest through student employment in the student role to set them up for success. When we started our SNAP program, it was in 2017. So I built it in 2016. My hope, full transparency, is that maybe we would have 75 applicants, and we actually launched with over 200 applicants right out of the gate. So this is before apprenticeships in healthcare were spoken of. I worked with our DOL for the state of Kentucky in 2016. We built it. We created the standard for what a healthcare apprenticeship would look like. We really spent a lot of time in that space. And then we launched our program. And again, to my surprise, we had 200 applicants. So we brought in 130 that first year. So you can imagine everybody who works in a budget having to go back and say, not only do I need more, but I kind of need to double it. And thankfully in Norton Healthcare, we have a fabulous financial team who understands what true investment looks like. And they did this for us. And so we were able to support students in our program. Our program is a 12 to 18 month program for students in an ADN program and a BSN accredited program. They are paid. It's a 3-tiered program. Because of the 12 to 18 month overlap, we have an average about 250 students per calendar year. The other exciting piece to this is not only was it a great thing 8 years ago, but we're still running strong because we just closed our recent application and we had 222 applicants for our SNAP program. The program structure is as such that we have the 3 tiers. We have our nurse explorer, our nurse extern, and our nurse apprentice. They do build on each other. So you cannot go to the next tier without completing the first tier. We competitively pay our students for each tier with incremental increases as they complete the tier that they're currently in. With this said, it is a true application process. The beautiful thing too is it's not limited to the state of Kentucky or to our region. As recent as this cohort, we had a student who attended Penn State. So I know that's right in your all's backyard. That was part of SNAP. And so the eligibility is there. The opportunity is there. And so especially for our students that are from the Louisville area that are going to school in a different area, but know they want to come back to Louisville for home, there's a lot of evidence out there that says where you train them is where they will work. And so we wanted to make sure that our students that did leave for that college experience still had the opportunity to be a part of Norton Healthcare wherever they are. And so this program really has helped us launch our culture change for students at Norton Healthcare and really set the tone. All of our students that are employed on my team wear green. And so that is our student color at Norton Healthcare. I'm super proud of that because that means when you are in any of our hospitals and any of our acute care locations or our office settings, if you see a student in hunter green, you know they are our future. And so we really do lean into them a little bit more and make sure that they feel extra special to be part of our workforce pipeline and our future at Norton Healthcare. When you talk about the foundation of what we have, so again, our program just is going into its 8th year. We have on your screen 5 years of data. We are finishing our 6th year of data right now in the next couple of weeks. So we'll update this for next year. But with 5 full cohorts, you can see that we've had almost 1,000 applicants for our program. We cover 130 plus zip codes. So again, it's not just in the Louisville area. I need you all to hear that. Investment can look the way you need it to look for the goals that you have. We average ages between 20 and 41. And I share that too, because the typical traditional student nurse is not your nurse coming right out of high school, right? So we need to make sure that we have programs that support your traditional student that's in their early 20s and your student that has a family, parents they're caring for, a second career, right? All those pieces and parts. How do we make sure that we support them? And then through COVID, we still stayed open. In fact, we gave our organization over 16,300 hours in support through our SNAP program. In the program alone, they have 280 clinical hours, 66 hours of additional education. 9 out of 10 stay with us without a contract. So y'all need to hear that too, without a contract. And of the 6 to 7% that don't stay, they relocate out of our working area. So we wish them all the best. We look at it as population health support. But the amazing thing is I still get calls normally around the 6-month mark that say, hey, Britt, I really miss Norton Healthcare. I think I'm going to come back. And so that's so exciting for us. And two, for us, we just moved into the Indiana market. And so we are growing our footprint even outside of our state. The 3 to 4% that don't stay in the working area, who do stay, they decide to work somewhere else. Most of them are going to doctor's offices, especially in the dermatology space. But even a few of those will call and say, you know what, I really feel like I'm not getting the skills that I might necessarily wanted to obtain, having been a recent graduate. So I'd like to come back to the hospital space. As far as our students who stay with us, they are still here at the 92% mark at the 1-year mark. We have avoided our organization over $33 million in turnover costs. And so again, when you're looking at the financials and you're trying to build your program, your ROI is just as important. And so we have that here. So while it does cost money to run the program, the ROI far exceeds that. I studied it, as I shared with you, as part of my doctorate work. So studied it, and there is significance statistically in our graduates that come out of our program. Our graduates also average 2 to 3 weeks less orientation because they're ready for practice. We're not shortening it. We're not discounting anything. In fact, we're validating what they know. And so they feel more ready to transition. So that was our first start. When you talk about milestones, that was our first one. Our second one came in 2020 when we started to look at our schools of nursing, our clinical groups, our individual placements, our capstones. Norton Healthcare at that time was a 5-hospital organization, and each hospital did things a little bit differently. And so when I started working with our schools, I understood that While expectations seemed to be the same, they were managed differently. Request processes were different. And with us now having a couple years working with our schools, it seemed more logical that they would all come to my team. And so I developed a schools of nursing team at that time in 2020. And so that allowed us to take all of our clinical placements and housed in one place. So we had compliance, we had accountability, we knew who were in our building, we could pull reports quickly, we could see what our pipeline looked like, we could really start analyzing data from a different capacity, especially now that we instituted a platform as well that was FERPA compliant. And so it really helped us do another level up as far as what our School of Nursing involvement looked like. So again, when we look at this, we average for undergraduate clinical placements about 10 primary schools of nursing that we work with, 6 paramedic programs. We put our paramedic programs into our schools of nursing because many times, other than intubation or the operating room, they like to be with a nurse because the scope is more similar in that space. So we go ahead and pair them with our nurses. 5 hospitals, 66 units that we had clinical on. We averaged 550 group clinical requests a year. 97.5% were able to approve on first round. So we're super proud of that because while this infographic is 2020 to 2021 data, we will do our next infographic in January for 2022, 2023. I can tell you we're already at 45,000 student encounters per year, averaging around 800 students per week. And so that is super exciting for us because, again, when you talk about your future, when you talk about your pipeline, you want your students to come into your organization and have a great experience. Now we can do that because we know who's here, what schools, what programs, and we can support them either through employment or non-employment with goals that they become employed when they graduate their nursing program. So then that gave me another idea in 2022. So this was just this past year, this summer in 2022. So I guess about a year and a half ago now. So we had tackled the student nurse opportunity, but I really felt like there were 2 other opportunities that we hadn't addressed yet. One were students who were in a healthcare discipline track that still wanted to work while they were in school. They may be nurses, they may not, but they still wanted to work. The second is because our SNAP program started traditionally at the junior year of a BSN program and after one term of an ADN program, what opportunity could we provide students in that gap from high school or from something else until they hit eligibility for our SNAP program? So I created our student healthcare assistant role. And so this is a student employment opportunity for any student that is in a healthcare collegiate discipline track. And so it bridges that gap between what employment looks like for students. The reason we did this also is because I don't know about you all, but I heard a lot of students say, I really want to work, but I can't work shifts, right? I don't have 8 hours or 12 hours to give the hospital, but I have a couple hours here and a couple hours there. Or my manager hired me and I had availability on Tuesdays and Fridays. Well, now my clinical schedule changed. I'm in my next set of courses and I have classes on Tuesdays and Fridays now. What do I do? Does that mean I have to no longer work at Norton Healthcare? And those things really broke my heart. And so I thought, there's got to be an opportunity here. So we created SHA. So here are some of our students in our student healthcare role now. Again, they were green to be identifiable within our organization. With that said, my goal last year was 100 students. I should have learned from SNAP, but I didn't. And so not only did we exceed 100 students, we are at 250 employed students in our SHA role. So if you put the math together, that's how I have 500 students employed under me. That doesn't include my leadership team, but 500 students employed under me. They are all system employees. This was important to me because one of the takeaways we came out of COVID, or we learned out of COVID, was that when we would redeploy our nurses, they would freeze sometimes. I can't do that. I work on this unit. This is the only unit I know. And they forgot the essentials of what it was to be a nurse. That's your specialty. but you have foundational, fundamental core competencies that you can do on any unit. And so when we created the SHA role last summer, I thought, I want them system employees. I want them to understand what it's like to bridge the gap in patient care, to have a core set of competencies that could be leveraged at any of our hospitals. And so we did. So we created this. Our students have a minimum of 20 hours a month that they have to work. Most work 40 hours a month, which is another win, because that was something we kept hearing, right? Like, they don't want to work. They don't want to work. No, they do want to work. They just can't work in shifts because they don't have the availability to work in shifts. But if you let them sign up for their own hours, and that's what we do, we have a system process where they can sign up for the hospital they want to work at, which also puts ownership on that hospital's leadership to retain them. But then it gives them the ability to sign up. And then 2 hours before their start time, if they're signed up to start at 10 a.m., at 8 a.m., they'll call the house supervisor. The house supervisor will tell them where they're going to go to start and what they're going to do based on their competencies. And so that's where they'll go. So they have that mentality of service. They have the mentality of meeting our patients where they are and what it really means to be a system employee with a competency core set. We average 55 FTE a month through our student health cares. And that is remarkable because, again, if you think where we were a year and a half ago, we had nothing of this. This means that on average, we had a vacancy of 55 FTEs through the ancillary role that was not being filled. And now we know we do have students that want to work in this space. And so we were able to accommodate that. The areas that we cover right now, there are SHA role, are our inpatient specialties. So that's another big thing that we did last year. I don't know about you all, but again, Med-Surg has this stigma to it. Our students would get a visceral reaction. Our new grads would get a visceral reaction when you would say Med-Surg. And so we really decided to stop calling it Med-Surg, that we would really focus on what is the specialty that is being done on that unit. Is it a cardiac step down? Is it a neuro? Is it an ortho? Is it oncology? What is it? And so we spent all last year into this year, we just finalized it 2 weeks ago, renaming all of our medical surgical units that fit in this category. So we have our inpatient specialties, our pediatric hospital and our pediatric units, our ER services, as well as our mother baby units. We're excited to eventually continue to expand in surgical services. And if we do that, we will pretty much cover top to bottom of our hospital. So we're excited about this continued growth. So that's kind of where we are with those three. So we had SNAP, School of Nursing, and then our student healthcare role. Then you start talking about nurse turnover. And so when we look at Norton Healthcare compared to the United States, we're pretty close of a like to like. You'll see in 2021, our bedside nurse turnover was 25. The opportunity we have at Norton Healthcare, and that's still the door I'm knocking on, is to really separate out turnover first year. Is it new grad first year or experienced nurse first year? Because again, two different populations, two different needs. And so we are working through that now. But we had bedside turnover at 25.7. Nationally, we were at 27.1. So very comparable. In 2022, we were at 22.1. Nationally, 22.5. Again, comparable. This year, we've seen a little bit of a drop, which is fantastic, 17.4. And of course, we're waiting for the national averages to come out later this year. But we are trending in the right direction. For Kentucky, we just launched these numbers in November, but our nurse vacancy rate even looks like it's incrementally coming down, which is fantastic. So not only is our turnover rate going down, our vacancy rate's going down. So we were at 21.9% last year, and this year we're at 19.7. Some estimate even as low as 19.1. So again, while that doesn't feel huge, I would much rather trend in that direction than in another direction. And I think a lot of the conversations I know that I'm having with our KHA for our state, our Board of Nursing, what my colleagues are doing, we're really wrapping our brains around how can we make the successes of what we're doing a state success and hopefully continue to pull that number further down over the years. But because I work with new grads so much, I really wanted to highlight why our first year nurses are leaving. And what we're finding is that what literature is telling us is not actually what's happening. So if you look at literature and if you kind of lean into media, what you'll hear is they're leaving because of pay, they're leaving because of pay, they're leaving because of pay. No, that's secondary. They're leaving because they don't like their working conditions. That's why they're leaving. And if they're going to work in those kind of environments, they're going to work somewhere where they're going to get paid more. So it's a secondary effect to a primary cause. And so the three primary causes that we are experiencing that ANA has also validated is stressful work, right? High acuity patients. You don't get admitted to the hospital unless you're sick these days. And over 80% of our new grads, that's their first job. So you're taking your less experienced nurses, putting them in the most sickest acuity patient, and you're wondering why they're struggling, right? Also, long shifts. So you got new grads who are learning how to chart. We haven't transitioned electronic charting into our academic space yet. And so they're trying to learn all these pieces and parts. They're trying to learn how to have a true conversation because the pandemic did not help us with virtual nursing in that space. They didn't know how to enter a room, how to exit a room, how to manage patients, how to have conversations. And so their shifts are getting longer. They also don't get breaks, right? Because when they're not scheduled to work, if staffing is not up to par, who's getting the phone calls? Our nurses who aren't on the schedule that day, but maybe had just worked the last 3 shifts, right? So a lot's going on as far as the work conditions. The other thing is lack of leadership and supervision. So when you're talking about having a mentor or somebody to guide your new nurses, who's there? Who's available? Because your A&Ms probably have 6 months to a year experience, and your nurse managers probably have 3 total years of nursing experience and probably 0 to minimum leadership experience, formal. So now we're asking them to run budgets, to run staffing, to have critical conversations, to interact with providers, and they don't have the tools. So what does that look like, right? And so they're turning over. Well, if I'm a new nurse coming into a unit the first time and my leader's leaving and my A&M's leaving and my charge nurse is leaving and all my resources are leaving, why am I staying? Right? And so that's one of the concerns that they're having. The other thing is just understaffing. And so all this compiles with just general nurse turnover. So if my friend's leaving on that unit and going somewhere else, maybe I should. Even if I enjoy my job and I like what I do, it still plants the seed. There might be something else out there for me that I'm not considering. So that's why I really started digging into academic practice partnerships last year. And so I wanted to make sure that we had purposeful crosswalk of curriculum, that we established dedicated education units, that we had joint appointments for our nurses, our bedside nurses at Norton Healthcare, as well as really help in the workforce readiness for all students. So when I share that, when you look at your academic practice partnerships, we kind of target 8 areas. And so we looked at our nursing programs. So right now, Norton Healthcare has 2 formal partnerships with 2 of our primary schools of nursing. We have a 3rd one in the works. I share this because when I choose our partnerships, I look at what they offer and what gap that fills for Norton Healthcare. So one of our partnerships is an accelerated nursing program, right? 1 year, non-traditional students, in and out, focused on nursing only. That's one of our partnerships. Another one, all they do is nursing. They offer PN, ADN, BSN, master's, and doctorate. So if you just want nursing, you have that too. The 3rd one that I'm going after right now is one that really targets the community individual, someone who really likes the community college, the focus of being in an area that's close to a hospital and school and where they live. So that's the 3rd one I'm targeting. But the 4th is in conjunction with our nursing only program and our high school. And so we are creating programs that allow our high school students the opportunity to graduate with an actual nursing degree so that they can pass and sit for their NCLEX to become part of our pipeline for Norton Healthcare. So again, when you look at academic practice partnerships, it's not a just grab as many as you can find because you still have to manage them. It's looking at what they have to offer and how that bridges the gap with what you need. For our Norton Scholar population, so we offer Norton Scholar, which is tuition assistance at Norton Healthcare. Before I started on the academic practice partnerships, the end of last year, we looked at our Scholar Dollar. And so our Scholar Dollar was $40,000 that we would give our students for their program. Well, when I had conversations with one of our partners, especially the academic accelerated program, their tuition exceeded what we could offer. And so I really believe, especially in nursing, there's no reason you should go to a nursing program and have to pay tuition. There's just not in today's world. So part of that conversation was, how do we work together through a partnership to get your tuition down and to get our Norton Scholar up? So we were able to bring us up to 45. They were able to bring theirs down to 45. So now we can offer tuition free through our Norton Scholar program for any student nurse that's in that program. With that, we then created our DEUs, our dedicated education spaces, and our joint appointments. So when I talk about this, I know I jumped over workforce. I'll come back to that. But through the DEUs and the joint appointments, we took those Norton Scholars that we know want to work for us when they graduate, and we crosswalked the curriculum at those schools and said, okay, here's our 10 nurse competencies, here's our 5 leader competencies, and each of the courses, what are you highlighting? What are the objectives? And then here are the units at Norton Healthcare that we're specifically going to dedicate for your learning on that curriculum specific topic. And then we're going to offer our nurses who work the floor the ability to be joint appointed. So if they want to teach for you, that's part of their FTE. So it helps us bridge the gap for clinical faculty and clinical instructors, while at the same time saying, you chose Norton Healthcare, we also choose you. And so we're going to invest in your learning through the student space with our nurses that work those floors. So instead of having Susie Q or Tommy Smith that works at a different organization having clinical at our hospital through that school, no. You're going to have our nurse who works that floor that's going to teach you what needs to be done through that curriculum space. We also, through conversations, created dedicated workspace for workforce development. So what this means is, through our school that does solely nursing, every Wednesday, Norton Healthcare is present. So what we were finding is, it's great to hand them a document or a flyer that talks about Norton Scholar or all the resources we have at Norton Healthcare, but it's even better if they can hear it from us. Because what we were doing is we were training the school's workforce team to have those conversations. And then if there were further needs, they would circle back to us. A lot was getting lost in translation. And so part of partnership conversation is, I said, I'd love to have someone present once a week, that if you have any students that have any questions, you will always have a Norton Healthcare representative from workforce available on that day. And if you need something in the meantime, here's our contact. We are available for that student. When it came to peri-op elective courses, we know surgical services is our highest retiring area of nurses. So I wanted to tackle this as well. So we created a peri-op elective course with our school, our accelerated school that also has a traditional 4-year program. So we have a peri-op elective course in the 4-year program taught by our surgical services educator at Norton Healthcare. This benefits her because she always wanted to teach at the collegiate level. It also benefits her because any of our employees who are joint appointed get the benefits of being an employee of that school. So it gives them the ability to have graduate credit now if they want to continue their own education. And so we have that course available. We already have students in that course, and it is doing a fantastic job. We also have the ability for our CEs. And so for our nurses who are no longer in a formal academic institution program, but want to learn about surgical services, instead of just committing to it altogether, every other month, we rotate our CE program at each of our different hospitals so they can learn from our educator what it is like in pre-op and PACU, in the operating room, in a procedural area, cardiac cath, right? what are all those spaces? And then after that, they do a shadow of this. I'm sorry, they do a tour of the spaces. If they're still interested, we set them up the ability to shadow nurses so they can lean into that a little bit more. And then if they're really interested, we then give them the opportunity to apply for jobs at Norton Healthcare in that space. So again, really trying to be mindful of what we're doing in the peri-op space. When it comes,
Brittany, this
yes,
is
ma'am.
Marcia. There was just a quick question. What's Kentucky's degree retirement for clinical faculty? Do you have that through your Board of Nursing? Is it the BSN, MSN, or most of your schools are AAC or CCNE accredited? Curious.
So some are SAC, some are CCNE, some are NLN. As far as what's required to teach, it has to be that level or above. So if you have an ADN program, it has to be ADN or above. If you have an LPN or a PN program, same thing. What we're finding in it is another, which is a great question. Another area that I'm challenging our board through different conversations is we have some extremely knowledgeable ADN nurses who have been in practice for 30, 40 years, and they want to teach. But because they don't have a bachelor's, we're missing an opportunity to connect them. So what does that look like? Right. And so we are really kind of pushing that angle right now to say, could there be a BSN oversight of the ADN? If that's really what we have to stick to, can there be a different model or structure? Because we're losing nurses who have extreme amounts of knowledge for a degree that they'll never go back for. So what does that look like? So great question. Great question. And then you go through our CPG courses. So again, this is one of our centers that I shared at the beginning. Similar to our nursing practice center, this is our growth center. And so what we did here is I took our nurse fellowship course that we have for our aspiring nurse leaders and crosswalk that with their graduate course. And so when they complete our course at Norton Healthcare, they get college credits, and then they can use that to then advance and portfolio out of some of the leadership courses in the graduate level. So they have that opportunity as well. We really worked this past year with our marketing team to really be more transparent and visual in what we're doing at Norton Healthcare. And so what does that look like for collective media? That we are in combination with one of our partnership schools and we are pushing that message out. How do we work in that space? So that's been really exciting this past year. I do not have a marketing background, but I will tell you, I've learned a lot about marketing, and which is good because nurses need to be in all these spaces so we can understand and speak that language and really be able to educate our colleagues who aren't nurses about what we do, which has been a beautiful transition this last year. And then again, I talked to you briefly about our 10 core competencies for nurses and our 5 leader competencies. So these are the ones that we use at Norton Healthcare. They're interwoven with our CEPs for our new grads, our competency evaluation profiles, which is what we call them. They're also woven into our partnership crosswalks of the curriculum that they have. So again, if you are a Norton Scholar and you're being taught by a Norton nurse, that Norton nurse knows to say, well, in this course, we're going to highlight infection prevention, reaching for zero, and patient experience. So that when they become a nurse for Norton Healthcare, these are not new terms for them. They've heard it. They understand that Norton supports this. They understand that this is the primary fundamentals for what nursing care is at Norton Healthcare. So heaven forbid, if we have another mass outbreak of something, we now have a tool that we can go back to and say, no, I'm not asking you to do XYZ. I'm asking you to manage a patient's medication, and you know how to do that. You know your 5 rights, you know how to call pharmacy, you know how to ask questions, right? Or we're asking you to make sure that you have safe patient care of the appropriate team. So if you're in charge, look at the nurses that you have staffed. What is their expertise level? What's the acuity you have on the floor? Does this make sense as far as assignment? Should we shift models around? So we're really trying to give our nurses and our nurse leaders the tools to be able to have those conversations in real time or in planning if something does come in the future. This is a document that I share sometimes. This is what guides me.
The correct recommendations for the use of a metaphor.
It goes through what I classify as our partner level, our collaborative level, or our affiliate level. You'll see that there's different areas in here that I look at when I'm having conversations with one of our academic institutions to determine what level of investment we're both willing to give and we're both accountable for. And that's the other piece, is that success doesn't happen by itself, right? It happens through a team. I have an amazing team at Norton Healthcare. Amazing. I would put them up against anyone, any day of the week and twice on Sunday. But we can only do our side. And so we have to make sure that anyone that we decide to partner with, or we have a different level of agreement with, that we both understand what we're walking into. And so we've done a lot of work this last year. We completed our clinical affiliation agreements into a primary document for all disciplines of the academic institution. So we're really working towards making sure that we all understand the level of commitment that we have when we're going into these academic practice partnership conversations. The other really cool thing, and I have this link on here in case you all are interested, but I was fortunate enough to be a part of AONL's academic practice partnership team when we wrote the compendium for workforce. And so there's some amazing resources in here. We poked holes at academic practice partnerships. We talked about what's working, what's not working, where are some of those opportunities. In fact, when I was on the team, I noticed that we didn't have anyone on there from the accreditation lane. And so I called one of my colleagues and said, hey, jump on this team with me because you have the expertise in this space and there's not another resource that does. And so I share that with you because sometimes you need to phone a friend, right? And say, hey, listen, you have more knowledge than I have. And us putting our heads together, we can probably create something really cool. And so that's where a lot of this started. So there is a beautiful, this is part 3 of AONL's document, is the workforce piece. But I would highly encourage you, if you haven't looked at it already, definitely take a deep dive because there's some lessons learned. There's programs all across the country of really great things that people are trying or doing to really kind of give you some of that energy and excitement for something you might want to build. I love this picture too, because it is not a one size fits all. It is what fits you. And so I would encourage you as well, when you're trying to build something, look at what your goals are and what gaps you're trying to fill, and then work backwards and figure out, does that work for me? Does it not work for me? I tell my team all the time, we can fail safely, but we will never quit. And so failure, there's so much beauty in failure because you learn what doesn't work. And so you know not to do that again. And so with us having, and me specifically having 8 years experience just in this space alone, there's a lot of things that I would tell you, yeah, don't do that because here's how we, experienced it, or here's how we experienced it. You may not, just a cautionary tale. Or here's some things that went so great. We've replicated this every single time I've built something else. So again, it's not one size fits all. It's not one size fits most. It's what fits you. This is our new branding at Norton Healthcare this year, and I love it so much because guess what? We're part of it now. Workforce is in there. And so our theme and our brand and our tagline this year is there's no limit to what our care can do. And we're Norton Healthcare, so it makes perfect sense. But our care is focused on 4 areas. So all of our strategies at Norton Healthcare now are around safety, clinical and quality of safe care, safe practice, access to healthcare, retention and workforce, which is where we get to live in. And I'm so honored to get to live in this space, and then ease of use. And so again, if you don't have that common theme that you can grasp onto, I really encourage you, your organization, your marketing team to kind of lean into that, because it is that common compass that no matter what you're working on, you all can come back to a central theme and go, yes, that makes sense. That's why we're working on this, because it's part of our strategy, or it's part of what we're doing, or it's part of our commitment to the patients we serve or the employees we serve. So again, I'm super proud that workforce is part of what we're doing at Norton Healthcare. So that's us. That's our roots to what we have today. 4 different areas, 4 different opportunities for student engagement, 4 different opportunities for community support. And just super proud of all that we've done, and hopefully all that we have is more to come. So with that said, I'll open it up to questions. Here's my contact. If you have any questions or need me afterwards, you can always email me, brittany.burke@nortonhealthcare.org, or you can call my office, 502-446-5893, and I'm happy to have further conversations. Marcia, if it's okay, I'll stop sharing my screen and we can go into Q&A.
Brittany, that would be wonderful. Thank you very much. And if you can't tell, her energy alone, I just think fosters excitement, engagement, and opportunity. And it's interesting. When she talked about KHA, that's her Kentucky Hospital Association, just as we have relationships with our Connecticut Hospital Association, our Leading Age Connecticut, which is the long-term care trade association for not-for-profits, Connecticut Association of Healthcare Facilities, and the Connecticut Association for Healthcare at Home. So, really trying to cross-pollinate those groups and share data. I think, Brittany, it's critical. It's critical. I'd love to open it up for questions. If people just would like to raise their hand, I can call their names and we can foster some dialogue. So I'm just curious, does anybody have any specific questions on what Brittany had shared? Or feel free just to unmute yourself.
Hi, it's Lenore Riley. I just wanted to clarify first, Brittany, thank you so much for your presentation. It was outstanding, and I agree your energy is infectious. So thank you for that. I am an amazing company. I can see the wonderful academics on this call and others. I am a registered nurse, DNP prepared, and working on my PhD. I am curious, how did you fund your scholar program? If you said it, I apologize. I was trying to keep up with your dialogue.
Yes, no, great question. So our Norton Scholar program is through our workforce development team. That's through HR. So we have certain dollars allocated internally through Norton Healthcare that we provide tuition assistance for our students. Our SNAP program, SHA, anything else that my team does specifically is all funded through my budget. So we have not accepted grant funding. We are 100% invested through Norton Healthcare. It is some money, but again, the ROI is there. And so I always share that because, again, when I tried to start this 8 years ago, I was hoping for 75. And we've grown so much that every year when budget season opens, I need a little bit more. I need a little bit more. And thankfully, we have an amazing finance team that understands that while cost isn't following revenue in math space, because typically that's how you're funded, we are providing the revenue in a different space as far as our workforce pipeline. So we have human capital, and that's what we really like to call it, is we have this human capital of students, and that is what we are investing in for those dollars. So it's really a two-part: our Norton Scholar through HR workforce, and then our employment, paid employment through my team, specifically through the Institute for Education and Development.
Thank you very much.
Yes, great question.
Anybody else who'd like to ask a question or share a reflection or comment? Dawn.
Oh, hello. Hello, Brittany. I don't know if you can hear me okay. Can you hear?
Yes.
Okay, good. So I work at Yale New Haven Health Center in Lawrence and Memorial, which is a community hospital. And we do run a perioperative course for nurses to come in and new grads. But I'm wondering, with your course, how long is that perioperative course combined with that partnership with the college? How long is that actual semester for them?
It's a great question. So right now it's around 14 to 16 weeks, but we feel that's too long. The school that we're with has a traditional semester. And so that's technically where it falls in. However, they're under curriculum accreditation revision. And so we are targeting to 7 weeks. And so we're hoping that it can be an elective that's half the length of what they would do somewhere else. And so that's a lesson learned for us this year, is that while the interest is there, the length is too long. So we need to get creative as far as what that looks like. And so they are working with us to figure out how we can make a 7-week course.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. That's
yes,
very helpful. Thank you. I might be in contact with you.
Sure.
Anyone else? Comment or reflection for Brittany?
Hi, Brittany. I'm Crystal Devance Wilson. I'm from the Maryland Nursing Workforce Center. I'm the director there. I would love to hear more about your work with high school students. Sometimes, that high school students are considered a little bit way upstream for some investors. So can you talk a little bit more about it?
Yes. And I don't know if you all read Becker's, but if you don't, you need to read this article. They just came out with an article probably 2 weeks ago, specifically on high school students and healthcare. And if it didn't warm my heart, it warmed my heart, because they hit on some really important points as far as how we put age associated with competency, knowledge, or even the ability to do a job, instead of the competency with the education required to do it. And so they specifically pointed out, I might have a 25-year-old that might be 25, but may not be as competent as a 16-year-old, right? Just because they're 25 does not give them the pass go. And so it's a beautiful article to really challenge some of the status quos. And so that is one of the articles that we're using at Norton Healthcare when we're having our conversations with our Jefferson County Public Schools, as well as with our other nursing partner school, to say, we're on to something, right? Because we've been working on this since last summer, and we're getting ready to launch it in February. And so we're taking a group of students. So this is hot off the press. This is coming, right? So we're taking a group of students, and we looked at what's required for them to graduate high school in our school system. And I don't know if this is across the board, so I can't speak to that, but I will tell you, in our school system, they have to be able to have a math and an English credit senior year. They have to have at least 3 math and at least 4 English. So they could potentially already be out of their math, but they will have to have an English for sure. So what we're doing is e-school with them for those 2 credits. And then we are transporting them from their school to our nursing college. They are completing their nursing classes. We've identified clinical units at Norton Healthcare that they will have their PN clinicals on, that we already have LPNs that work on that, because that was really important to me. I want our students to see themselves in those roles. And then over the course of a year, they start in the summer between their junior and senior year. And then all things work out as they should. They will graduate with their high school in May, and then they will graduate with their PN in June, and then they'll be able to sit. And then hopefully they'll come on. Well, they will, because they'll be Norton scholars, but they'll come on working for us as an LPN with hopeful bridge into RN, and then we can support them in that growth as well. But the beautiful thing about that is we've did the math again, looking at your ROI, the cost of the program is comparable to what a part-time high school minimum wage student would make. And so that is one of our talking points, is you can go to college because it's dual enrollment. So you can go to college at the expense of Norton Healthcare. We will pay your tuition as long as you agree to work with us when you graduate. And if you're not working as far as a job outside of this program, the money that you would make part-time equates to what the tuition assistance is for what we would give you for that program. And so we really want our students to know that if they want to be a nurse, if they have the desire to, and especially senior year, we all can be transparent. I'm sure many of us on this call had a very relaxing senior year in some way, shape, or form. But if you already knew that you wanted to be a nurse, which I did, I would have loved to have had a program like this, to be able to go in, complete it my senior year, obtain a PN, and then bridge into RN. It also helps us too, because when we talk about career ready, and that's really what we talk about in our state, what is more career ready than actually a career when you graduate high school, right? And so a lot of times we have what we call healthcare academies, which is a lot of pre-nursing credits. But the disconnect was our collegiate institutions weren't all accepting those credits. And so our students had to complete it again. And so what value is that given to a student who's saying, I did the work, and just because this school won't count it, I have to do it again? And so we wanted to get rid of that and say, no, A&P Anatomy and physiology is anatomy and physiology, whether you take it here or you take it here. We have the same number of bones, the same tissue development, right? Like it's all the same. And so we're really elevating what that is to focus more on the nursing essentials and focus more on competency instead of just checking boxes. I hope that answered your question a little bit.
Brittany, there was one question in the chat from Mimi Schneider from UConn. She said, is there other data available to show the 2- and 3-year retention of new grad nurses at Norton, if you filtered that out specifically?
We do. So we go all the way down. So when we go right now, first year is, so it's 90% from SNAP to RN. First year is 92%. Second year is 84%. Third year, we go to like 79. We take a dip into the 70s, which very much mimics the V-shaped pattern, right? That we all experience. But then after 3 year, we go back up to the 80s. And so we have a lot of our SNAP grads that are nurse managers now for us, that are educators, that are experienced preceptors, that are A&Ms. And so it's so awesome to see the investment that we gave in them as a student and how they're paying it forward now. So we do have a little bit of a dip that 3 year, but nothing, our numbers are nowhere close. National averages, national standards, anything like that.
Thank you for that reflection. Then I just had one follow-up question. Does Norton offer anything for the MSN or the graduate? I know you mentioned something regarding leadership. Was that what you were addressing for that graduate level?
So we do. So we offer 2 things. We offer courses through our CPG. So that collegiate crosswalk, of course, our nurse fellowship is one of those. And then what we also do is periodically, we base it on workforce need. We'll do cohorts of either DNP or masters. And if we have nurses that are interested, they will interview with myself and some other nurse leaders that are in this space heavily. And we will offer them Norton Scholar for that. And then we will help create a pipeline enroll for them to be able to excel in that space.
Fantastic, fantastic. I know we only have a minute left. Any burning questions? Well, I just can't thank all of you for joining us today. We know that it's hard to get time and we try to do it during lunch. I just can't thank Brittany enough. I so appreciate your time and sharing your expertise with us. I see a lot of great thanks, great webinar. So we had about 37 folks who were participating, which is a great number. As I shared, an email will come to those of you who attended. And please fill out that evaluation and you can get your certificate. A question was asked. If you watch the recording on our website, everything should be posted by next week. You will not get CEs for that recorded experience, only in person. So unless anybody has a burning question, I'd like to thank again our speaker, Dr. Brittany Burke, for sharing her time, talent, expertise, and more importantly, passion. But one thing that really struck me, Brittany, and we need to look at this too, how you classify the individuals you or the entities you engage in. And unfortunately, as I was looking at that chart, just on my personal experience and how I view it from external, I would say probably 75% are way on the associate. We've not brought that engagement to the fiscal sharing, goals identification, alignment. We have pockets of brilliance, but as really meshing it all together with the essentials and the crosswalks, it's a huge lift. So I thank you for digging in and creating a team to make this lift. So thanks for sharing.
And thank you all for all you do for nursing and for our profession. It is such an honor to be a part of it, and bless all of your work, and Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Happy holidays to everybody. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thank you.